Hello and welcome to We Never Met, the podcast where I have interesting strangers on every single week. Today we have Amber Stafford. Is that right? Is that how you say your name?
Yep.
I'm super excited to have you on. Yeah, because I found your work on Instagram. And do you want to give people a little bit of background on what you do currently with your rug making?
Yeah. So currently, I guess I'm a full-time artist. I make handmade rugs, wall hangings. I'm mainly active on Instagram, but trying to get into the TikTok world lately.
Oh, how's that going?
I have my likes and dislikes, but I guess that's the way the social media trend is going. So.
Yeah, I've been very wary about going to TikTok just because I think I have a lot of preconceived notions of what it's like.
It took me forever, and like I would meet people and they're like, "Oh, what's your TikTok?" Like it was just a normal thing.
Yeah.
And so eventually I was like, okay, I cracked. And
What is your TikTok, by the way?
It's also Makers of We. So across the board, Instagram, TikTok, my Gmail account, everything is just Makers of We. So my website, makersofwe.com as well.
Yeah.
Super easy to find me.
Where does that come from? Where's Makers of We? What is that?
It was actually inspired by a song by Curtis Mayfield, The Makings of You. It was just a song that I remember hearing a lot growing up, and I don't know, just kind of enjoyed. And I just kind of created this variation in my head. I was like, oh, Makers of We, I kind of like that, being that my subject is usually like a figure. So it kind of has like a little bit of double meaning behind it, but mainly kind of inspiration taken from that song. What
led you to, because I mean, now I feel like, the Instagram algorithm got me. And now that I found you, I'm seeing a lot of rug makers, but I didn't see any before I found your account. So what even got you into this sort of like craft and art form to begin with?
Yeah, so I was an interior designer. I went to school for interior design. So I've always had just like that drive to create like a product line. I've gone through a lot of trials and errors of doing like, I don't know, pillows and curtains or wallpaper, or I was in the kitchen and bath industry for a while. So like tile was kind of appealing. I always kind of wanted to create, I guess, a product more than like a full picture sometimes. So I kind of went down a rabbit hole on YouTube. I believe it was like TikTok that kind of started the trend of the rug makers, but I discovered it through YouTube. I got hooked and just kind of like went at it the very next day, buying supplies. I started doing everything by hand, which looking back like seems crazy, but I mean, it got me here. So,
because what's the other way to go about it, like other than doing it by hand?
Yeah. So right now I have like a Tufting Gun. So it's like a machine, kind of like a sewing machine that in your hand that uses yarn, I guess. So it pushes the yarn through and it will cut the end for you automatically. So before, when it would take me like a week to do a single rug by hand, now I can do that same rug in probably a day. So way less time consuming, a little bit, I would say, neater as well. But they both have their pluses and minuses, I think.
So when you first got started, like what was the learning curve like for rug making, being that you had no like prior experience doing it? Is it a tough thing to get into?
I would say it was like really rough at the beginning. I would try and take as much information as I could using my resources online. It's just a lot of trial and error. I think the biggest thing for me was finding like materials in my budget. I don't know, a lot of what you see is like the best and the most expensive. And I've always been very, I would say, like resourceful. Like I don't need the best materials and the most expensive things. Like just want to work with what I have. I'm very passionate about sustainability. So just kind of reuse and recycle kind of idea. So I think that was the hardest thing to overcome, is like actually finding products that I enjoyed using and that looked good.
What even, because you make your rugs are really amazing, and you make them in all different like types and subject matters. So because I guess with rugs, you could really make a rug out of anything, I guess, if you like wanted to make a rug with any subject matter. So how did you sort of figure out how you wanted to present what you were making and like what direction you wanted to go?
Yes. So my first rug that I ever made was actually a body that I drew of myself. It was like a picture that I took of myself. And I think maybe a lot of women can resonate that you go through like daily insecurities. And so it was like a push for me to create a piece of art of myself because we're all art. And from there, I created that first rug by hand. And the amount of feedback that I got from that was just amazing, and a lot from like women that kind of have experienced the same thing. And so for me, it was very important to spread the message of like self-love and body positivity. And I think that was like my big push.
The rugs, once again, like people need to go check them out because they're amazing and really well done. I feel like there also has to be, you have to be, because you do draw all of the rugs before you do it. So you must be a good artist as well outside of that, like even just drawing wise to create these. Because I feel like the rugs I would make would be abstract because I'm not a very great artist. So it would just be sort of like all over the place.
I use my iPad on Procreate, which is just a drawing platform that helps you make a lot of changes. Other than my design degree, I really don't have any background in like illustration or graphic design. So it was honestly just like a couple years of playing around on my iPad mixed with like perfect timing of wanting to leave the kitchen and bath industry and pursuing something for myself.
Yeah, because so you talked about it a little bit, but what were you doing before? Because you recently started doing this full time, right? So
Yeah.
what were you doing before you started doing this full time?
Yeah, so I was in the kitchen and bath industry, so essentially was a designer where if somebody wanted to redo their kitchen or their bathroom, they would come in. I would help them pick products, maybe layout changes, get them in contact with contractors. I never really felt fully like creatively satisfied in that industry. I mean, you just get boring of talking about toilets all day. And I always felt just kind of drained at the end of the day. Like I'd never really had the creative spirit that I did, prior to being in that industry. So I don't know. I just woke up one day and something changed and I was like, I'm going to do this. And I haven't looked back.
That like pivot is something that's like truly awesome because you're doing something that you really love. And I feel like a lot of people are stuck in a job or they feel stuck in a place sort of like you are where they're like not fulfilled, and it doesn't have to be, they don't like, I think the misconception that a lot of people have is like, if they're not happy with their job, like they have to do something creative, like they have to go be like an artist or something to be fulfilled, which is definitely not the case, but they can find something that they really love. So I think it would be helpful too for people to hear about your experience of like what it was like when you started doing something that you really did care about and want to do every single day compared to like the old job that you had that wasn't really that great, just like the different perspectives you had.
When I started working in the kitchen and bath industry, this was pre-COVID. And so going through the pandemic is what really switched my mindset. Instead of having this pursuit of like wealth and a career, I had more of a pursuit of purpose and like finding my place. I'm 23, so I feel like just pretty young in the industry that I was in. I just always felt kind of out of place in it. And once I had that switch of like, money doesn't matter because no job is safe, and that we've learned through a pandemic, it just kind of made sense. In a weird way, I had a lot of guilt because I had friends that were struggling to find jobs. I had, you just read things on the news. And so I was like, here I am leaving my career essentially to potentially like be in a really bad position. So I had a lot of guilt associated with that. Just definitely like insecurities. I don't have a background. I don't have an art degree. And so I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I wake up every day and I'm just like, I got to figure something out. Kind of that fake it till you make it model. That's my day to day. It's just kind of fake it till you make it. So I think like still, so let's see, I quit my job in January. We're now in August. So I mean, still, I feel like, things are unfolding the way they're meant to be. I was not really meant to have the position that I was in. And I think all of that prepared me to be where I'm at now.
Yeah, no, that's super great. I'm glad you're in that place. Yeah, I'm quite a bit older than you. I'm 30, but I think that experience generally is super relatable. I think people often, in my parents for sure, their generation was very much like you work to make money and you work to support your family or whatever. And you don't have to like it. That's why it's called work, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And now there's more of a shift, it feels like, to finding something that you actually enjoy to do, that you don't hate to wake up every single day and go to. Even if you're not doing a traditional 9 to 5, you work so much of the time. So you should find something that is fulfilling in some way for you, definitely.
There was a weird time period where, I mean, I was raised by a single mother and I have 2 brothers, so there was 3 of us. I was the only one that went to college and got a degree and had a decent job. And so there was like that feeling of like disappointing my mom in a way. And I was almost scared to tell her like, hey, like, by the way, I'm going to quit and I'm going to do something totally different. And like, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to do it. And after I overcame that fear and finally told her, it was that moment of like, she was like, yeah, like, I support you, do what you want. And I think that was really changing for me too, of like, sometimes you project insecurities onto people, and you expect them to react in a certain way. And that's really not the case. It's just, you just have to be confident in what you're doing.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that sentiment for sure. I'm interested too of like the process of even like creating a rug, because I was like watching your stories, or maybe it was a video on your Instagram of like even putting like this plastery stuff over the top, and I was like, well, I didn't know any of this stuff happened when you made rugs or any sort of tapestry like that. So what is the process of like making them? I'm just interested.
So like we kind of touched on before, it all starts on my iPad with a digital drawing. I do a lot of like commission work. So when someone reaches out to me, I make sure that we're all happy with the design before I ever get started. So, I mean, some people, they see the first thing and they're like, oh my God, I love it. Make me that. Some people, we go through 5, 6 designs and whatever it takes to make it perfect. I'm slightly a perfectionist, so that plays a big role in it. But once the design is good, I have a projector. It's just like a cheap movie projector. And I can project my image onto a frame that has stretched cloth. There's like a special cloth for making rugs, which before I got into this, I never knew about. But it just really allows you to not like rip it or tear it. It's kind of like self-healing in a way. So once that image is projected, it gets traced onto the frame. Then there's like the tufting. So that's probably the part everyone's most familiar of if they've seen rug making on social media. It's actually like putting the yarn into the cloth, like the making of the rug itself. That can take anywhere between maybe an hour to, I've spent upwards to maybe about 8 hours on a rug, just with the tufting part. So the part that you mentioned about the glue, that's, I hate to say it's kind of my favorite part. It's just kind of satisfying to glue the back of it. Like I said, I work from home, so I kind of like apologize to my roommates every day because I'm like, I know this stinks. Like, I'll put the window open. I'm sorry. But it's just essentially gluing the back. So now when the rug is being used, the yarn isn't going to pull through the cloth. Takes about 24 hours for the glue to dry, and it's really easy to just kind of cut out from there. I apply like a backing, and then lastly I go through what's called like the carving or like trimming stage. So my Tufting gun, especially now that it's getting a little bit older, your scissors get more dull. It just has more of like a uneven look to it. So lastly, I would just shave everything to a smooth, even layer. I like cut around all the lines. It just really is like the cleaning process. That usually takes me the same amount of time, if not a little bit longer than actually tufting. So again, I spend like hours just on shaving it alone. And again, just being a perfectionist. Then that's it.
Yeah, no, it's such a cool it's a cool process to just watch like unfold, I feel like, at least from what I've seen.
Satisfying and it's rewarding, I think, to start from a string and have now something that lives in your home with you.
Yeah, like that has to be a really cool thing to see your pieces in like people's houses and stuff. Like that has to be a really cool, gratifying experience.
It was always important to me to like create a special space. Like even when I was a kid, that was something that I always wanted to do, is like redecorate my room or rearrange in the middle of the night for some reason. And now I feel like to be able to have that impact on others, like I've seen people that are now kind of designing their room around this rug as a focal point, which is like, it's just really gratifying and it's really rewarding.
Yeah, I had a similar thing when I was growing up too, and it's like a weird thing because I grew up in a very small household, and I have, similar to you, I have a lot of brothers and sisters. I have a brother and two sisters, and so there's something about like when you rearranged your room, it was like the coolest thing ever. You're like, oh, this is so cool. Yeah, this tiny little box I live in is somehow now cooler because I moved my bed.
Our spaces are really important, and it's really interesting. If I'm kind of a nerd with the design trends, if you look back to like after the industrial era, there was a lot of like, let's just call them like cookie cutter houses. You know, everything was able to be made and mass produced, and there was this huge push in the art world and design, fashion to combat that completely. So that's where you see like all these kind of wavy lines and one of a kind things. And I think that we're kind of going back into that, like after being in the pandemic and everyone's home again, and now we want like fun, colorful spaces. I think we're getting out of the gray and white walls and Joanna Gaines Target decor.
Yeah.
And getting into more of just like homemade, one of a kind things, just really customized and personalized things.
Which is great because then you're supporting a person rather than a massive corporation as well. So that's nice as well. I also think like a lot of people are just spending so much more time than they have wanted to in their house. And so now they're like, oh, well, we should make this nice probably, or fun or colorful or something if we have to be in here all the time.
Yeah, my goal with my rugs is to really create like a conversation starter. I want it to kind of stick out, and I want people to ask like, where did you get that? Or what is that from? Because we don't have a lot that always does that around us. So
yeah. And you sort of talked about this a little bit about how like even we are, you know, as humans, like art. Has your mind like artistically, were you encouraged as a kid to like create and like sort of be free and do what you want to express yourself, or was it more or less not like that for you growing up?
I would say yes and no. I definitely was like very artistic as a child. I was known as like the messy kid because I would go around to different rooms and have like all these little projects, which none of them would ever get finished. But then my mind would be racing. I would start something else again. So in that sense, like I would say yes, but there was another push for me coming from a single parent home to be very like independent and to kind of, you know, do better, be better. And so I think that's where like my push for design came in, because it was like the meeting of the two worlds. This is a realistic thing that you can get into that will make you money, but you can still have this creative sense to it. So that's kind of where it met in my high school days. So I feel like now, like I said earlier, I've kind of gotten out of that mindset and just kind of switched all of a sudden.
Yeah, because it definitely feels like when you're growing up, you get sort of taught these things by your parents, and then there's sort of almost like a compromise in your mind of like, well, I can't fully do what I want to do because of all these other things that I was taught when I was younger, but I want to inch towards it. But then when you do it, it's sort of like the compromise is not great because it's just like, it's compromise. It's like not what you actually want to do. It's like half what you want to do.
No one's happy. Yeah.
I felt like very much like I had to go to college because like what else would I do? You know, sort of what are the other options when I could have just done the stuff that I do.
It's sometimes like a safe route.
Yeah. Which is weird because it's so expensive.
Literally. So expensive. I know college isn't for everyone. And I think at the time I thought it was for me because it was like, it gave me more time. Like once you turn 18, you're like, oh no, I'm an adult. I have to figure something out. But I'm like, well, I'm going to school. So I have a couple more years. And I think I kind of used it as like a safety net to stay comfortable and kind of get out of that comfort zone that once I did, I really grew from it.
That is completely true. I definitely agree with that because I did too. It was more like an extension of being a kid still. Like I don't have to be an adult yet. I'm in college for 4 years. I'm working towards it. Okay, just give me 4 more years of not having to deal with being an adult. Yeah, I completely understand because I went to college and I just finished paying off my school debt like this year. Because I went to a private school and it was just insanely expensive. And I always say, like, I don't feel like I learned anything there. I don't feel like I actually, the only thing I learned, I think, is like socially. Like I learned a lot because I had friends of very diverse backgrounds that I wouldn't have met if I didn't go to college, which I'm grateful for. So I think I developed like that way, but definitely not education wise, like what I actually was paying for, you know?
It's rough too when we live in a time where like if you want to learn something, you just like pick up your computer and everything you need is at your fingertips. It's just a matter of having that like self-motivation. But exactly like you said, like the networking that you get out of college is kind of something that is irreplaceable and is really hard to get without that experience.
And when you are working with people and clients, what are their reactions to your rugs? Because I feel like even just looking through your Instagram, I'm like, oh, this is so cool. Like, I feel like that has to be theirs as well.
So I ship a lot out. So I don't always get to see the reaction, but I always get positive messages back. It's kind of that thing where when you make something, it's different in your eyes. So I'll be like, here's this thing. I hope you like it. I know you paid for it, so like I hope this is okay. And in their eyes, they're like, "Oh my God! Like how could you have made this?" I'm like, I see all the imperfections with it. So I wish I saw more of like the reveal, but it's just a pandemic. We'll get out there one day.
Yeah, you need that. You need the Chip and Joanna reveal for your rugs. You pull something apart and it's there.
Yeah, honestly.
That's so cool though, because I wanted to ask, like, what's even looking through. I'm sure not all of them are posted on social media, but I wanted to ask, like, what was the most like complex one that you've done so far, the most like detailed? Because you do like animal faces, you do like big like scenescapes. Like, so what was the hardest one that you had to do?
And it sounds kind of weird. So a lot of what I do is like custom drawn. So anything that I draw, it ends up being easier to make because it's almost like repetition at that point. So I think the hardest thing that I made was I did like a Lisa Frank one for like this really short kind of nostalgic collection that I was making. And her style is very like gradient. There's a lot of colors, a lot of details. But I think the biggest thing was like, this is an iconic thing. Like everyone can recognize it. So like capturing that likeness, that's what made it most difficult versus something that I draw. It's just supposed to look like whatever it is. No one's ever seen that design before this. So in their eyes, it's what it is. So I think like the Lisa Frank one for me was the most difficult and just kind of making it look as it's supposed to.
So you got into rug making and like doing this and started doing it full time this year, but getting out of like the full time position you were before and getting into like a more, since you didn't do this before, like you could have gone so many different directions. You could have done a lot of stuff, I'm sure. You said, you got interested in looking up rug making. Why do you think when you were looking up, like, what do you think it was about rug making that was like, oh, this is like really cool and I'm like really invested in this all of a sudden? Like, what do you think it was about it that like attached you to it so much?
I think like I really enjoy every step of the process, and that's really important for me. Like no day is wasted or dreaded because I always have something to look forward to. I would say also like my love of just kind of textiles, of just experimenting with like synthetic yarn versus like inorganic cotton, or using wool a lot, and just kind of like that whole side of things, which I was kind of more exposed to in design school. And so I had that little bit of background knowledge beforehand. And it kind of felt like all of the pieces of my world were being put together. I could be freely creative. I can work from home and still make a living, not fearing getting laid off. And then also just being able to create and do the satisfying trimming and the social media aspect of taking pictures and being able to connect with people that I otherwise wouldn't be able to. So I think it was just really all around, everything seemed to make sense with my life, which is weird because without that one single day of that one video being suggested to me, I mean, who knows? And I think that's why I believe so much that things will work out. This is your path, and just, I don't know, trust in the universe, trust in chaos. Everything just kind of ends up working out.
Yeah, who knows, if you waited till like the Olympics, you could have been like a knitter or something. Like everyone's talking about knitting now. So yeah, you just never know. I think it's really interesting. And I've talked to several people who have left their jobs and are pursuing something that's more that they're more passionate about. But the first like probably a couple months, I mean, even still now, I'm sure. And you talk about taking it day by day, but can you walk through like emotionally, like were you like really like what am I doing? Like was there ever, because I think a lot of people really want to do something like this, like where they're like, I really love X, Y, or Z or whatever and want to do it full time, but it's getting through like the initial period of like being so scared that you're doing it now. And because it is that idea of like false security, the 9 to 5, the health insurance, like that could, as we said, like that could all go away. Right. So yeah, it's getting over that hump of like, okay, well, this is, I can do this. I'm okay. Like, could you just talk about those like first couple of months?
I don't think I've ever fully gotten out of this period of like, I don't know what I'm doing, and just like nervousness and anxiety. At first, I think I was a lot more confident. I tend to have this perceived reality in my head that everything's going to work out. And like, I mean, like a video was going viral. So I was like, oh, there you go. Like I'll just blow up and that'll be everything. And I think it's like the small kind of jabs to your ego, that like builds you up higher in a way. So I kind of needed to go through like, having a big head and having that taken down to be able to be more like humble and just less afraid of what I do. Like I said, I don't think I've ever really fully gotten through it, but I'm trying to think of what else. I talked a little bit on like the guilt feeling. Yeah. I think that was very present in the beginning, where I just felt like I wasn't making the right decision. I could be potentially putting myself in a place where, I don't have rent money or grocery money or now health insurance. So there's a lot of guilt associated with it too. And to overcome that, it's just kind of, again, like this weird trust that I have that things will just work out. And I won't be able to explain it, but it's kind of one of those things where you just, if you know, the end result has to be always in the back of your head as you're going through the journey. So, I mean, everyone goes through hard days. You have to just pick yourself up, keep going to reach your goals.
Yeah. It is funny that you talk about that when like the sort of like belief that I have a very similar mindset where I just like do something and I'm like, I can do this. It's fine. And I'll be okay. Even if it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But so you talked about a little bit, what were those like jabs that you talked about to your ego that like brought you back down? Were there any specific things?
Yeah. So I had been invited to an art show, and it was like a woman's event. It was the first time that I was going to be in the public with my work. So before that, it was just strictly social media. So in preparation for that event, I created these magnetic sex toys to bring with. And it was kind of just like a joke. It was supposed to be for the event only. And I ended up posting a video on my Instagram that I think right now has 3, maybe close to 4 million views. So, I mean, it blew up, and I was like, I never expected this. I mean, of all things that I made, this is the one. Like, I kind of just felt in a way defeated that that's something like I so carelessly put effort into was what got the attention. I don't know, through every viral video, there's a number of comments that it's just kind of like unnecessary. A lot of people were saying that I was littering because I was going around the city to make my video and connecting the magnets to like park benches and stuff. And I'm like, okay, like those ones I can look past because nothing was left behind. I'm not going to waste my time. But there were just some mean ones that I'm like, these people don't know me. And like from this video, you still don't know anything about me and you're trying to attack me personally. So I think there was like that moment of like being in a public eye of like, okay, now I feel kind of on edge to just kind of be myself. So I think that was a big one for me. I'm just kind of getting over that fear of, I'm a little shy, just kind of getting over that fear of like, all of these people have seen this thing that's not your best effort and you could do better kind of idea.
Yeah, no, I mean, I thank you for telling that story because it is very relatable in just every single sense of the way. I think I suffer with OCD and anxiety disorder I have for my whole life. And I did a whole series on YouTube about mental health for Mental Health Month. And some of the videos got posted on like sites like Upworthy, who have like millions and millions and millions of people every day. And I can empathize with that because a lot of the comments you get are just misinformed and just basically to get a reaction, right? Like I feel like half of the internet, more than half, is just trolls, like just bad comments, people like that have bad days making bad choices. And now I just sort of don't even read a lot of that stuff because it just becomes so toxic for your own ability to live your life because you take those things personally, obviously, you know, and I completely relate to that. And I'm sure a lot of people can. And also the part of like, you know, doing something as sort of like a fun thing and that being the focus rather than the stuff you're doing that you're actually proud of and like is cool.
It was definitely a learning experience because I like initially was like, I want to delete all these comments. I'm going to delete the video. Like, why am I putting myself through this? But then I had to kind of remind myself every time somebody's commenting on this video, there now might be 10 more people that see it. And maybe one of the 10 of the people really enjoy my stuff. And so it's kind of that switch of like all publicity is good publicity. And I kind of had to like just sit off of social media for a little bit, let everything kind of die down, and then get right back into my goal and my process, which at the time was releasing a collection.
Yeah, I mean, and it is really just like a funnel. You know what I mean? It's like it'll get people there, sure, that have annoying things to say about you, but there's going to be a lot of people that don't and like are really interested in what you do. So yeah, it is just having to weather the storm,
yep.
You know, and just being like, okay, well, eventually this will be, nobody will care. And then I'll get a good amount of people that do care actually about my stuff long term as well. So no, I really appreciate you sharing that. And so to wrap up, like where can people find out about what you do if they do want to reach out and like get something custom made or just follow you as well and be nice on social media? Where can they do that?
So everything is under Makers of We. So my Instagram, TikTok is Makers of We. My website is makersofwe.com. I do have a collection coming out next Friday. So Friday the 13th, I'll be dropping a bunch of new stuff on my website.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate having a chat with you. It was so cool to get some insight, and the work and art you do is amazing. So thank you so much for taking the time.
I appreciate the opportunity and huge fan. So thank you so much.